Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going right to the heart of it. Like what actually makes the US and China, tick, culturally speaking, of course. I mean, we always hear about these two, right? Global superpowers. But we're going deeper than the usual like political economic stuff. We're going deep with this super interesting text comparing how each country, how each superpower is dealing with all the pressures of modernization. And get this, it all comes down to their core, their cultural cores, American individualism
Oh yeah.
versus China's Confucian foundation.
Yeah, it's really interesting to compare the two because even though we exist we live in a globalized world, the way that each nation, like its cultural bedrock, really shapes how it responds to all this change and all these pressures.
Totally. So let's unpack this whole thing. Let's
Okay.
start with the United States. Okay, land of the free, home of the brave,
Right.
all that good stuff.
hmm
Individual liberty, forging your own path, classic American dream, right?
Totally. Yeah, and this text, what's really interesting is it argues that this is deep-seated individualism in America, while obviously a source of strength. It also presents some very, very unique challenges in the face of modernity.
Okay, now you've got me. Tell me more about these challenges.
Okay, so the text, what it does is it points out that for like a large part of American history, religion,
Yeah.
especially like Christianity, provided this like really, it was like a unifying force. It
Yeah.
gave this shared set of values, a moral compass that people, from all walks of life could just generally agree on.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. Like it's regardless of what the belief system is, when you've got that shared system, it can really bring people together.
Absolutely. But, and this is a big but, the text argues that as America's become, more secular,
Right.
that shared moral compass, it's weakened.
Yeah.
And it's led to this kind of sense of fragmentation, within society.
Yeah.
And it even goes as far as to link this decline in religious participation to the rising rates of all the mental health struggles and substance abuse that we see. And it suggests that maybe, without that sense of belonging, that shared purpose,
Right.
people, they feel lost.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a pretty like stark claim.
Hmm.
So does the text do they give any examples, like specific examples of
Yeah.
this whole like shift?
It does, yeah. It talks about how even in, like popular media,
Yeah.
you see way fewer depictions of just like religious life these days.
Yeah, interesting.
The focus has really shifted more towards like discussions about identity politics, individual rights. And while those are super important conversations to be having, the text really argues that this hyper-focus on individual identity can sometimes like overshadow our shared human experiences.
Yeah.
And it can actually contribute to these societal fractures that we're seeing.
So it's like instead of seeing ourselves as part of this like larger whole, this bigger picture, we're becoming more and more focused on what makes us different,
Yes.
on like our individual needs, our
Yeah.
desires.
Yeah, and the text isn't saying, individualism is like inherently bad or wrong.
Right.
Of course not, but it's raising a question. Can a society really thrive when its citizens are increasingly disconnected from that sense of shared purpose, that sense of belonging?
Right.
Is there a way to celebrate individual liberty while also nurturing these really crucial social bonds?
Those are really, really important questions. And it sounds like the U.S. is still trying to figure that out, right? Like they're still wrestling with finding that balance.
Yeah.
But how does this stack up to China's experience?
Yeah.
I mean, they've historically been way more communal, right?
Right.
Confucianism is like center stage.
Exactly.
How does that work?
Yeah, you see Confucianism, like, at its heart, it emphasizes harmony and social order.
Right.
It's this philosophy that's like, it's woven into the fabric of Chinese society, like, for centuries.
Okay, so, I mean, it sounds like the U.S. is, grappling with some of these downsides of individualism, and China has this whole other framework for, navigating the modern world. But how does this philosophy, like how does this ancient philosophy actually play out in a rapidly changing, globalized society like China? I mean, they're dealing with the same pressures as everyone else, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But what's so fascinating is that China has this really long history of absorbing outside influences and then adapting them to fit
Okay.
within their existing cultural framework.
Wow.
And the text, it highlights, specifically how Confucianism has shaped their whole approach to things like economic growth and globalization.
Okay, that's interesting. So it's not like they're rejecting modernization. They're just kind of filtering it
Yeah,
through this Confucian lens.
exactly.
Do you have, I don't know, any specific examples of that?
Yeah, for sure. So take their approach to economic success, right? Like
Okay.
in the West, we often associate success with, individual achievement, right?
Yeah.
But in China, because of this Confucian influence, there's a much greater emphasis on how that success, benefits family, the community as a whole.
Right.
It's way less about the me and way more about the we.
That's a really different way of looking at things. It's like their definition of success is like intertwined with their social fabric.
Exactly. And it goes way beyond just economics.
Okay.
The text also talks about how, like, historically China has integrated these outside, like, philosophical and religious ideas,
Yeah.
like Buddhism, for example,
Really?
without losing that Confucian core.
Wait, hold on. They incorporated Buddhism?
Yeah.
That seems like a pretty big deal. How did that even work?
Well, so, like, Buddhism in its, original form, it's very much focused on the individual enlightenment, on
Right.
freeing yourself from suffering. But when it, like, arrived...
Okay.
with a really heavy emphasis on compassion and service to others. So instead of like seeking individual enlightenment, Chinese Buddhism, what it does is it emphasizes using those teachings to contribute to the well-being of, society as a whole.
Wow, that's wild. It's like they took this like deeply personal, like individualistic philosophy,
Yeah.
and they just like wove it into their like existing social fabric.
Cool.
Like they were just like, okay, Buddhism, we like your ideas about compassion and mindfulness, but let's use them to make our communities better, not just ourselves.
Yeah, and the text, it really argues that this ability to like adapt and integrate these like outside influences, that's a testament to the strength and the flexibility of their Confucian foundation.
Wow.
It allows them to embrace change while still maintaining this really, really strong sense of cultural continuity.
So they're not just like clinging to tradition blindly, right?
Yeah.
They're using it as like almost like a framework to navigate the complexities of like, the 21st century. But does that mean like that their system is perfect?
Right.
I mean, are there downsides to this approach?
Well, I mean, no system is like, perfect,
Right.
right? The text definitely points out, some of the challenges that China's facing when it comes to, maintaining this balance. Like,
Sure.
for example, all that, super fast economic growth.
Yeah.
While obviously positive in so many ways, it's also led to, we're seeing rising inequality.
Right.
And there's a bit like a sense of unease, like some of those traditional values are kind of coming under pressure.
Right. From like consumerism and all that.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
even with like a really strong sense of community and that shared purpose,
Sure.
they're still dealing with some of those same social tensions like we see, in the West.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's like, in a way, yes. The text kind of suggests that China is like, they're walking this tightrope,
Yeah.
trying to like, reap all the benefits of economic modernization while still somehow preserving all those cultural values, the values that really give like their society this like incredibly strong sense of cohesion.
That's a tough thing to balance.
It is. It's really delicate.
Yeah.
And I think, only time will tell how it'll all play out.
It's fascinating to see these two like totally different approaches to, to modernization, and each has like its own, strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
But it makes you wonder, is there anything that these two, they seem like total opposite, cultural cores. Can they learn from each other?
Yeah, and that's what makes this whole like deep dive so interesting, because the text really argues that in our, in this world that's becoming more and more interconnected,
Yeah.
understanding those different cultural perspectives, it's more important than ever. And it's not about saying, one system's right and one's wrong.
Right.
It's more about like recognizing that we can learn from each other's, each other's experiences.
Totally. So what could the U.S. and China, what could they take away from each other's journeys?
Well, for the U.S., the text suggests maybe, it's time to rediscover that sense of shared purpose,
Okay.
a sense of belonging that goes beyond just like individual identity.
Yeah.
And this isn't about like abandoning the ideals of, individual liberty,
Right.
but it's about like how can we strengthen that social fabric? How can we foster a greater sense of community?
That makes a lot of sense. And what about China? What could they maybe learn from the U.S.?
Well, the text, it proposes that maybe China could benefit from, embracing a little bit more of that American spirit.
Yes.
that individual innovation, that creative expression.
Right, right.
Like while their system, is obviously incredible at maintaining stability and
Yeah.
order, maybe a little more, freedom, a little more space for that individual exploration,
Right.
maybe a little risk taking. Who knows? It could lead to even more progress,
Yeah.
more dynamism.
It sounds like finding that right balance
Yeah.
between, individual expression and like the collective responsibility.
Yeah.
It's like that's the challenge for everyone,
It is.
for every society, no matter, where you're coming from.
Absolutely. Yeah. And ultimately the text, it leaves us with this like really thought-provoking idea.
Mm.
Maybe the key to navigating all the stuff, all the complexities of the 21st century. It's not about like forcing our own systems and our own models onto other people.
Right.
It's about, trying to reach a deeper understanding.
Yeah.
Like really appreciating all the different ways that societies are grappling with these shared challenges, because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
we're all in this together, right?
Yeah.
We're all just trying to create a more just and equitable,
Right.
sustainable future for everyone.
That's a powerful, powerful message. Well, we've journeyed from the heart of American individualism to like the ancient wisdom of Confucian China.
Yeah, it's quite a spectrum.
It is. And I think what we've learned is that there's no easy answers.
No.
No one size fits all solution, when it comes to these challenges.
Right.
But I think, by understanding all these different cultural perspectives, and engaging in these thoughtful dialogues.
Yeah.
And like really respecting each other, respecting those differences.
Absolutely.
Maybe, just maybe, we can find a path forward, that honors our shared humanity, but also celebrates, our unique cultural identities.
Really beautifully said. I love that.
Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed, this little exploration of these global giants and the cultural values that are still shaping their paths today. And until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep diving deep.